Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rules of Thumb podcast with Dr. G. I'm your host, Nick Golinvaux, and I write a weekly newsletter on all things musculoskeletal health and longevity. That means fewer aches and pains and a better knowledge of what to actually do when they inevitably rear their ugly head. In this podcast, I will read to you my article of the week so that you can listen to it on the go. If video is more your thing, welcome to those of you watching on my YouTube channel. And as always, the original article with its associated images will be linked in the show notes below. So without further ado, let's get into this week's article titled, How Orthopedic Surgeons Fix Bones, Part 1. Have you ever wondered how a surgeon fixes broken bones? Or if you've seen x-rays of fixed bones, or even had the surgery yourself, is it confusing to see all those screws and plates? In some cases, it can look like a hardware store gone wrong. Well, today I'd like to walk you through how orthopedic surgery works. How bones heal. I'm going to work to keep this as simple as possible. Apologies if I get too technical. Feel free to comment below if anything is unclear. In general terms, bones can heal in two different ways after they break. Conveniently, these two mechanisms are called primary bone healing and secondary bone healing. As we'll discover below, the difference lies in how close the bone ends are to one another after they break, meaning, are they still connected or are they resting apart? This is the main determinant of how the bone will heal. And an orthopedic surgeon must have a plan for which type of bone healing they are going to use to their advantage. Let's start with primary bone healing. Today's article is going to be about primary bone healing. We will get to secondary bone healing in a future article. In primary bone healing, the ends of the bones are still touching and are very stable. In fact, the bone ends have to be within 200 microns of each other. Micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter, and there has to be essentially no motion at the healing site. So imagine your favorite puzzle. When putting the pieces together, the pieces would have to be compressed together and held without motion to achieve this type of healing. If this sounds difficult to achieve, then congratulations, you're paying attention. The above conditions to meet primary bone healing are very demanding, and they basically only occur with the help of surgery. If you've ever had a cast or a brace for a fracture, this is not the type of healing your body used. There's just no way for a cast or a brace to give your bones the stability needed for primary healing. Primary bone healing works best when there is a single break across the bone, meaning it didn't shatter into pieces. When this occurs, we can take that crack, line it up, and squish it back together. This is where the cool stuff comes in. To achieve the stability and squish that we need to achieve primary bone healing, we use our orthopedic tools to achieve compression at the fracture site. This is absolutely crucial for primary bone healing. Let me show you how we do that with plates and screws. You may want to refer to the article for the cartoons I've drawn of a typical fracture. Most bones break in some sort of diagonal or spiral pattern, depending on the specific forces the bone was subject to before it snapped. To achieve compression, we line those ends up and we put a plate on top, centering it over the fracture site. Simple so far, right? Here's where the technology gets cool. On one side of the fracture, we place a screw into the plate. This essentially holds the plate down to the bone for stability. Nothing too fancy yet. But then, on the other side of the fracture, we place another screw. This screw is the magic screw. We actually drill the hole for this screw as far possible away from the fracture site, but obviously still within the oval-shaped hole for the plate. If you notice in the figure, the oval-shaped holes actually have a little slope to them. This slope is everything. Please keep it in your mind. Up top, the holes are flared out, and down at the bone surface, they taper inwards. So if you insert the screw as far away as possible from the fracture, as you tighten it down, the head of the screw will eventually contact the side of the oval hole. Initially, it's just contact, but as you tighten the screw more, it will ride down that slope. That screw is headed down into the hole that you drilled for it, so it's on a mission. As it rides down that slope, it will essentially push the plate out of the way. And because you put that anchoring screw on the other side of the fracture, the movement of the plate being pushed out of the way by the screw will now compress the fracture site down to that magical 200 micron squish that we know we need for primary bone healing. Voila! Isn't it beautiful? So if you return to the original x-ray in the article, you can see that there are 3 screws on each side of the radius fracture. This helps provide long-term stability so the entire construct isn't just relying on 1 or 2 screws. If you really look, even though this plate and screw construct looks fairly symmetric, you can usually pick out the magic screw, which I've outlined in yellow, and that's the one that's slightly off center within its oval-shaped hole. That's the screw that's doing all the compression work. The bone healing process then usually plays out over the course of about 6 to 10 weeks after surgery. And the most counterintuitive part of it all that work is done to support the bone while it heals. This means that as soon as the bone heals, all that hardware becomes completely irrelevant. Most of the time it stays in the body for life, because who wants to have surgery all over again just to take it out? But it's irrelevant. It does no further good for the body after that initial window of healing. Seems like a lot of work for a short period of time. So in reality, there are actually a couple other ways to achieve bony compression in the operating room. Depending on the fracture pattern and the location, it can sometimes be achieved with a single screw, rather than a plate plus the screws. This can be done either in the way that we drill for the screw. This is called a lag screw, where you intentionally drill a wider drill hole on the near side of the bone and a smaller one on the far side. This will cause compression once the screw is inserted and it engages that far side of the bone. There's also a type of screw called a headless compression screw. This screw is designed with threads of different sizes on the same screw, which will thus cause compression as it's inserted. Some takeaways from today. Fractured bones can heal in different ways, depending on the characteristics of the break and how stable they are as they heal. Orthopedic surgeons need to know which type of bone healing they want to achieve when designing an implant to fix the fracture. Primary bone healing requires compression at the fracture site, which can be achieved with compression plating, lag screws, or headless compression screws. I hope you enjoyed this peek behind the curtain. These are some of the decisions that we make each day when faced with getting a broken bone to heal. Next time your friend tells you that they had surgery for a broken bone, maybe you'll take a look at the x-rays and be able to tell just how the surgeon did it. How's that for a cocktail party trick? Thanks for being here today. We'll see you next time.